I think I know who's gonna win this one, but it's actually not a very common matchup. Ryung, not Beyond. All right. How about some music? All right, we are on Ultra Love. In the bottom left, it is Ryung, and in the top right, we do have SKillous. Tuna's playing. That's why Ziggy got so interested. It's true. He does love canned meats. I assume tuna would count. So, like I was saying, I think I know the likely winner, and I think it is Skillous, actually. But it's just not a matchup that you see very often. I'm actually very surprised that Ryung signed up here, but it does seem like, for whatever reason, the KSR Cup gets more Koreans playing. If this wasn't such an odd hour, it would just kind of be like, oh, okay, well, they just decided they wanted to play on the PTR more or whatever. But it is at a very, very odd hour for Koreans. So, it's an actual effort, I guess, to get up and play this and stay awake. And a couple more have decided to do it since it swapped over to the KSR Cup from the ESL Open Cup. Now, part of that is no doubt that the region tightness, the rules have been loosened in this Open Cup. What the hell is going on here? There's like a black hole in the middle of the place. So you don't have to play on Europe if you're facing European. So, first of all, if this was not on the PTR server, that would be the case for this match, and then Ryung would even have a more difficult time. But then with the KSR, it's just the fairest server, actually. So that's one reason it's a little more appealing. The second reason is that it is on PTR, and perhaps the idea is to get as much practice on the PTR as possible. It's also a single server. You don't swap between servers. Not that, again, that would matter, I suppose. Everyone's trying to play on these fair servers, which was generally on NA anyways, but yeah, anywho. So this means that these two don't fare up against each other very often. They don't actually play against each other. But what does it mean for the actual play styles here? Well, TvP has changed a decent amount. I don't know about a decent amount, but it obviously got a big change with the overcharge. And Ryung, well, his power, I think, has always been... Okay, first of all, I messed up on gas. But his power has always been, to me, a very, very strong ability to take engagements. So I'm trying to think here. Are there anything in the late game, mid to late game, that would actually hurt him? Well, obviously the EMP was nerfed, but that was... Or not the EMP, sorry, the Ghost. The Ghost was nerfed. But I don't know, you can still get a decent number of EMPs out, so that's not... I don't know if that really actually affects this. I'm thinking, actually, that Skillous will have a tougher time against Ryung because the Disruptor doesn't one-shot Marauders anymore. And with that idea, when Ryung gets his epic surrounds with all the Marauders that he's going to get off of this very greedy 3cc opener, there won't be as many Disruptor hits that, either one, usually one hits pretty well when the Terran has decided to collapse in and chase no matter what happens. Usually there's one Disruptor hit that hits just because the Terran's in a hurry. That's not going to kill the Marauders anymore. Disruptors won't be able to clip Marauders when they get like a partial shot anymore. Basically, I'm just wondering if this series as a whole is going to come down to, can Ryung get to the maxed out Marauder bio army, find a decent engagement, and then win. If he does, and his 3cc already in effect, basically, like, Skillous is not going to punish this. By the looks of things, he is going to a 3 gates. Robo, so Colossus, after Blink, all the 4 gases are up, actually. Maybe like an older style of play, actually. I feel like we've seen nothing but 3 gases for the longest time. But anyways, Skillous is not going to be able to punish this 3cc. Again, extremely greedy. It was not just 3cc, it was no factory 3rd cc. So that's the greediest thing you can really do. I don't think there's any no barracks 3cc. That sounds pretty insane. The Stalkers have been trying their best to really tackle this, and they're doing an admirable job scouting. But obviously the Stalkers are not going to actually breach the high ground, although Ryung understandably a little scared this is going to turn into like a 4-gate out of nowhere, I'm guessing is what's going on here. So the stalker presence initially was not that big of a deal. It didn't even get a bunker, kept losing Marines, kept being bothered by them, kind of was like, okay, well, should I be playing kind of silly here? Gets a bunker. It is ultimately unnecessary, but just to lessen the cost of the Marine deaths, and then maybe also a little bit of that denial of scouting. Unfortunately, the Observer was not sniped, so I don't know how much scouting was actually denied. The depth in the natural, not going to find any SCVs, but it is causing a lot of worker disruption. Workers actually seem to be pulled to the high ground because, again, Ryung is so scared this is going to be just a little bit too much. And if it was a actual 3 or 4 gate, like an offensive one with a War Prism, there could have been a severe what's the word I'm looking for? This could have been a severe underestimation, there we go, that's the word, of the stalkers, but it isn't. So yeah, Ryung has a little bit of trouble with some stalkers. This is really all SKillous can do, but again, we're gonna have that 3cc, went right into that bio. It's gonna be a lot of bio, a lot of quick, a lot of marauders very, very quickly, and that's where Ryung shines in TvP. I don't know, anything else? Anything like a defense of a real 4-gate? Any mid-game battles? I don't know. Ryung's TvP doesn't make me the most confident, but when he gets, let's say, over 150 supply, that's when Ryung seems to really pop off. So SKillous need to be really, really careful. It's all well and good to have these little prokes and prods while you can do it, no problem. But then behind this, SKillous was just trying to get this base up, saturated, continue keeping pace with the Terran economy despite 3cc, which SKillous would have figured out long before he actually scouted the 3cc, by the way, and then ride it from there, which is, you know, the best thing that I think Protoss could do in the situation. But it's just going to be so difficult if Ryung gets anywhere close to maxed out. Double medevac drop doesn't actually unload is fairly awkward. Fairly awkward. Fortunately for Ryung, that blink is not quite good enough, so the double drop will survive. The plan is obviously foiled, but again, I don't think it's... You have to drop to try and get the Protoss to actually be reacting to different things and making their own mistakes, trying to force errors, because hoping for SKillous just to walk out in the middle of a very well-set concave or surround is just, you know, it's not giving SKillous enough credit, basically. So you do have to try and distract, but I feel like this double drop is literally only for that. Now it's kind of awkward as we have... I'm guessing Ryung intentionally kept that off to the side, hoping that SKillous would be overconfident in chase. That did not happen. It's also possible he did not hotkey them. It's extremely possible. But this is the concave, and this army's already injured from being poked, and SKillous is making sure to utilize this choke and this ramp so that he's never actually in danger, and this is working out really well for SKillous, who I believe has faced Ryung before, watched at least a couple of his games, right? Probably knows the ideal situation, not just for Ryung, but this type of opener and composition, right? Obviously very heavy on that one punch. You get the 3cc, you get all the bio, and then you try and take one hell of a fight. Not a lot before that, not a lot after that. So SKillous picking up on what Ryung's putting down. Again, trying to match the economy, stay one step ahead as Protoss should on the bases, and then trying to make sure that he never gets a full surround, because it's the only way his army's really going to die. Anything other than a full surround, and this army can poke and prod as long as it wants. Now, Ryung is going to get Vikings. He's going to get Ghosts. Talking a lot about Marauders for this scenario, because that is still probably one of the biggest things, but obviously the Vikings will eventually tear down those Colossus, and then we need to talk about what that other option for Protoss is to defend against the potential collapse of the Terran army onto theirs. And Disruptors were the answer. Are they still the answer? Kind of. I mean, they still decimate the health of the Marauder. They bring it down into the red. They still kill Marines. So you still want to dodge that as the Terran. You don't just want to take Disruptors to the face. It's just a little more leeway that can mean a lot when you have those situations where the Protoss is desperately trying to retreat, and it's depending on Disruptors to buy them that retreat time. If they get in that situation anyway. I mean, again, SKillous very good about using these ramps. I mean, checking out Ultra Love as a map in general as well. And already, the high ground with the ramp is actually kind of like, I don't know, feels almost old school. actually. But then looking at the rest of the map, we do have very few opportunities for Ryung to get this really sick surround. This is the closest we're going to get if he sets up. I mean, yeah, he'd have to bring it on the rocks and then kind of set up around here. Other places? Not really. Everything has a ramp pretty close to it. SKillous not even really having to weather a storm here. He's played this very calmly. He's played it very well, and now it's just about delivering the final blow, which, you know, can be tricky. But Ryung is not getting that type of map presence that he wants. He's not having any opportunities to get that perfect engagement, as all attempts to be aggressive have failed. I mean, it was really only one with the double drop, I guess. But still, like, he's not been the one in control of this scenario. We can see a little bit of that gung-ho-ness that Ryung, I'm sure, just really likes about the Terran race. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a disaster. As much as it can be scary to look down the barrel of a Terran army and all their guns when it's stims and it goes after you. You know, I know every Protoss is probably panicking, like, oh shit, what if they can win this? But SKillous is not panicking. SKillous just sized that up pretty perfectly, and Ryung's attempt to micro and collapse into the Protoss army, that was pretty much a failure, wasn't it? And now he's in an even worse choke. Fourth base not helping. So many stalkers involved here, making this army, again, not as durable as it might look. Couple EMPs, a concave, disruptors not getting those hits. This army could melt. It is a fragile army. It is a glass cannon to a certain degree. It looks like SKillous just going to go for the planetary, take that out of the equation before Ryung is able to collapse in on him. Ryung trying to set up this big surround, does manage to dodge one or two disruptor shots, but does not have enough by the end of it, maybe? Or maybe he does. It is 2-2 to 2-1. Again, the Protoss army does not stand up for very long. You're missing those frontline 20, 30 zealots that would typically tank against those marauders, but then, of course, would be microed, right? So that's the trade-off of zealots. But with stalkers being your buffer, being your meat of the army, they're just not going to hold up against marauders that well. So Tuna, Ryung does get the 20 supply lead. SKillous finally getting a warp in. It is going to be of more stalkers. He's going to temporarily forget Colossus. He might go back into them once those Vikings are down, but right now, speed is of the essence. Ryung did take a good fight. The one that he was waiting for did cost him the 4th command center, but he did take a good fight. And SKillous had to dig into that bank that he's accrued by having 5 going on 6 bases to replenish that army and continue the fight. It's a little bit of a Zerg mentality at this point, right? You pretty much know you're going to take damage if the disruptors, again, not high enough in count or don't actually get the shots. You're going to lose a lot of these army units, but you can replace them really quickly as they are on the cheaper side for Protoss. Would be nice to have some more upgrades on those units, and that's exactly what SKillous is aiming for. Now 3-2 for the Protoss as 3-3 finishes for the Terran. Ghosts making their way out, still not having really a lot to EMP, but just generally killing that army faster. Always a good move. Warp Prism gets bopped after some unsuccessful attempts at run-bys. Actually, gotta shout out Ryung's defense. So far, pretty good on his home base. He does have his 4th base back up and running, by the way. Zealots actually getting nice and close to a couple of Ghosts and Marauders. Do tear them up, and right now, I think Ryung having a bit of a medevac problem, actually. He's not building any more, and all these medevacs are out of juice. Either build more medevacs, or a Caduceus reactor could actually help. Right now, emphasizing that Liberator range, which makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, 4th base come up, and 4th base disappear. Disruptors will be the sacrifice, so by the looks of things, for that planetary. Was that actually worth it for SKillous? It looks like it will be. He's still finding the supply. The Stalkers making a successful retreat. Obviously, some of them going down, but Medivacs and Vikings also killed in the process, and SKillous holds on to a 50 supply lead thanks to a big old warp-in of Zealots. He did lose the Disruptors, but at this point, the Terran army is battered, bruised, and it's a 20 supply down overall. I mean, the Zealots, they can be kited for a long time, but you know how long it's going to take to kill 36 Zealots? Way too long. Nice use of the map right there. I forgot about collapsible towers, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But that was good of Ryung. I'm going to save him an extra 10 seconds. Still not going to be enough, but I like the idea. Liberators coming into a lot of Stalkers still, and just nothing to clear out these Zealots particularly quickly. The EMPs are gone. No Widow Mines have been created in this game, I want to say. And this is going to be game over. SKillous with a masterful display here of a smart Protoss, one who just kind of reads situation, plays it nice and safe, and then is able to deliver the killing blow after back and forth. But it's really important that SKillous never got over-eager to end the game, never got overconfident, didn't get scared either, really balancing that act quite well. Because it is very scary to say, oh my god, the Terran's gotten away with 3CC, 3 racks. I'm going to be dealing with so many drops and, well, maybe not drops, but so many attacks. I'm meaning a really powerful Terran army. I got to play super defensive, and then you take that slightly later third base, slightly later fourth base. You don't go out on the map at all because you're so terrified of being surrounded. Especially with what was shown there, I feel like Protoss is just ever towing the line. SKillous used to have trouble doing that. He used to get overconfident or nervous, actually, was more of the issue, I suppose. He used to get too scared. He used to play like a totally fine defensive game and then not really choose the right time to attack. But he's really improved as a Protoss player, just has yet to be able to show it in a major tournament. Looks like glowing blue ball. Not sure, just a dark hole. Now I spawn on the Ley Lines. In the top right it is Ryung, in the bottom left it is SKillous. SKillous playing really smart Protoss right there. Hitting all the beats of that matchup. Better, faster, more confident than Ryung. I mean, Ryung didn't really ever get to look particularly confident. The first 2 medevac drops were a complete failure. You know, the fact that they were basically deterred by a single Stalker and a handful of Zealots, like 3 Zealots got warped in, because they didn't unload, because they just kind of chilled there. If they had immediately unloaded behind the mineral lines, they probably would have sniped the 4th base, or at least gotten it canceled, I should say. Which isn't the end-all be-all, but it's something, right? And instead it was a big fat nothing. And that really set the tone, it feels like, for the rest of the game. You know, Ryung doing that 3CC build does have time to just be like, I'm focusing on my thing. I'm building my sandcastle. I don't have to worry about what I do to the other guy. Once those medevacs are out, once you start trying to actually find those fights, getting out on the map, distracting them, forcing them to feel a little bit of pressure as well, that's StarCraft. And actually, SKillous, the only pressure he had to feel was anything that he put on himself in that game, you know? There was actually nothing that was really being forced. So again, if he was super scared of the inevitable push with that 3CC 3 racks, and he just plays super, super scared the entire game, well then yeah, he's probably in a little bit of trouble. But he didn't have to be scared, very clearly. Ryung did not get to do anything. And by the time Ryung even took a good fight, it was already when SKillous had a lot of backup plans. So I do think the map was probably a little more ill-suited for Ryung's particular play style. I mean, he's not the only Terran who looks for concaves with a bunch of bio, obviously, but the way that I think, as I said, Ryung really pops off in this matchup is by getting to that close to maxed out scenario with a big surround. Like, he's had some really sick setups in the past in this matchup. But you're not going to see from Ryung the same thing you see from a Clem, who does represent probably the best TvP in the world, which is early attacks that do more damage than they're supposed to, little pokes and prods that really unsettle the Protoss and make them that little bit scared, mid-game pushes that feel like they have the same power as a late-game push just because they're so fast and they're so decisive. Yeah, fortunately, they're going to see that from Ryung. But when he does get his one punch going, it can be very scary, and SKillous was really careful to utilize the map to make sure that one punch army never actually got the perfect opportunity. He had a good opportunity, it wasn't absolutely perfect. And then this map, checking it out, I think there's a few more opportunities for big surrounds, just maybe in like the middle of the map here. That last map felt very choky, because it wasn't just chokes, it was also so many ramps, so many collapsible towers and rocks and stuff. This map does not have a natural ramp, but like I was saying, it's almost You know, like, I mean, we have natural ramps, right? We had to basically count how many natural ramps we had in a map pool to determine how good Max Pax is going to be with his 1 git expand of PvP. But there's something about that last one. I guess it was especially choky. It was especially rampy. That's definitely what I'm going with. It felt almost old school. And yet SKillous tried very hard to still find damage. This game actually not being too eager to go across the map, as we did have a factory expand from Ryung. That makes a little sense. Not wanting to be caught being overly aggressive against a potentially aggressive opener, right? Which the factory expand, I mean, it should try and be aggressive. It can be used for defensive purposes, sure, but it's going to try and do something. Is high ground CC the meta now? No, not really. I wouldn't say that. It's a choice. It's one that Beyond does a lot. Ryung, no doubt, talking a lot with Beyond. Both of them. Korean Terrans, obviously. Or other reasons, like, you think they're going to try and go for an early aggression. Like an early Adept Stalker or something. Ooh, the Widow Mine! Nicely done. I did not see that at all. Neither did SKillous. Not until the last second. But yeah, high ground expand against someone who is like very well known for being early aggressive. High ground expand to further cause confusion. They can try and kind of hide it from the Adept Scout a little bit, although that's what happened here. Anyways, there's reasons to do it, but it's definitely, I would not say, the thing to go for immediately. So, Ryung gets a free Phoenix kill, which is awesome. He was clearly setting up for an aggressive style, building this many Vikings, bringing those, the medevac, right? The medevac's basically the first sign that someone's going to be aggressive. They're not just going to keep that at home. And the tank being brought along in that medevac, getting into a very nice position. This is a little scary. Cyclone is almost dead, but almost being the key term here. That could still... Oh, no, and a Phoenix gets rallied in. Oh, no. He already lost 1 Phoenix. To lose 2, that is a lot to take away from this. With a total of 6 Phoenix instead of 4? Well, he doesn't have detection, so I guess he can never pick up those Widow Mines. It is tough. It is tough. It's just the right amount of units to really complicate things for a Protoss. Finally, we are going to have this break. The Adepts come in, take those Widow Mine shots, at least one of them, and the tank does go down as the Immortals get nice and close to it. Phoenix did provide some help. As you can see, though, another one died, and many of them injured. 3 Phoenix dead in this game. Nexus was canceled and then obviously delayed as we tried to break out of that. That was still an effective push. We have seen way worse pushes. We have seen those types of pushes actually get totally slapped in the face. They try to run away, and you can't against the Phoenix. This instead got, I think, everything it wanted to, plus the army got away. It didn't kill any of the Immortals, which is always a little sad. Those are the expensive, slow-building units. Yeah. But it killed almost everything besides that, and the Phoenix count just has been pummeled throughout this game. You really should have... Yeah, now 4 Phoenix have died. I didn't even catch the last one, but... You really should have the... Oh my god, another one died. We're just down to 1 Phoenix. This was basically not even a Phoenix opener at this point, you know? The Phoenix had one little moment where they helped out, but honestly, the rest of the game, they have been basically useless. That is all the Phoenix dead. He had one more that he built, but it seems very useless at this point. SKillous, no doubt shaking his head at every Phoenix loss, and now, oh, this is so awkward. Oh, that perfect opportunity where, of course, they're depending on Phoenix to be their anti-air. They have not yet added Blink. They have not bothered to add on Stalkers because they can't really afford to, while also building Colossus and Phoenix usually. And so the Vikings just get a free shot. They're going to get another freebie. Yeah, only 2 Stalkers aren't really going to deter these Vikings. I mean, I guess if the Colossus runs far enough back, it will, but then you're just leaving the Nexus opener to... The tanks will also help against the Colossus should they need to, but... I mean, I don't know if they can. Energy recharge on the shield battery to then charge the shield to the Nexus, but that's a very temporary measure. Now the shield battery not going to help in the main engagement. This Nexus looks like a goner. SKillous not going to try and save it. Not going to go at the last second, just realizing it was, in fact, dead. This is the smarter move. because I don't think he was going to break that in a very pretty fashion, and he wasn't going to save the Nexus either. But, you know, best decision in a very, very poor time here. This might just be enough. With the chargelets coming in, yeah, it will be enough. The tank's not able to help take out those zealots very well, right? The Immortals actually getting on top of the tanks once again, but the last few units, unfortunately, of Ryung are going to be able to turn things around and grab the rest of SKillous' army. Oh, no. Oh, that was a nice maneuver. Ryung was rallying the rest of his army forward as he realized he had an opportunity, so he knew that he could turn around, but still, a lot of times you would see that small of a Terran army just evacuate. Maybe SKillous could still have 2 Immortals in the fray. Not that I think that would be enough. Ryung, even though I still think his most powerful TvP is when he gets straight to that bio, this clearly was a good plan against SKillous. SKillous was kind of all over the place that time. Did not have that same... not confidence, but he didn't have the same control over the game, where he also got to do what he wanted to do, and then just did away with any form of harassment and then played the rest of the game like he did in the game number 1. Game 2 here, Ryung completely bamboozling SKillous. It's a bamboozle. But it all started with that Phoenix in the main, I think. That's the Widow Mine plus the 1 extra shot of the Viking or Cyclone, whatever it was, to actually kill the Phoenix. I feel like that set the tone. It was like SKillous has gotten a lot better about not letting something just snowball in his mind, but it happens to the best of players. One thing goes wrong, and you kind of think about it for the rest of the game, and then another thing goes wrong, and you think about that the rest of the game. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Phoenix killed in such a sequential fashion, you know? Sometimes they fly over 2 Widow Mines, they all get bopped. Sometimes they fly over the Marines, they all get bopped. But it was literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just almost as if it was just counting. Good old Hecate. Shout out to whoever remembered this map existed. I mean, it is a good map. I'm not saying it's not. It's just... It wasn't one that really left an impression, so if I'm thinking of old maps to bring into a map pool, I would not have thought of Hecate first, that's for sure. Alright. Top right, it is Ryung. Bottom left, it is SKillous. Ryung 3cc, 3 racks. Never really gets to say anything in the first game, despite a strong opener. SKillous scouted it, reacted to it, figured it out, knew the plan. Played out the macro game really, really, really well. Second game, Ryung opens up Factory Expand. Puts a little bit of a damper in SKillous' opener. When you got those 3 Adepts, the idea, I think, is to generally do a little more. Be a little more annoying, right? Go after the command center with the SCV. Threaten going up the main base when the supply depots are down. And that might not sound like a lot, but, you know, it puts, again, that little bit of pressure on the other guy, so that they do mess up in very slight ways. Well, that didn't really happen. When SKillous scouted that it was a factory expand, he basically kept those Adepts at home. Then he was like, well, the Phoenix will take care of things. The Phoenix will scout, the Phoenix can do the harassment, and then I'll make sure to keep them all alive. and then I'll be golden because I'll have 6 Phoenix and 2 Colossus by the time this guy pushes. Or a Colossus, actually. Not 2 of them. And that just was completely wrong. The Phoenix were really, really useless. Not one of SKillous' best Phoenix games. That's for sure. That's for sure. An oddity, I will say. A very, very unfortunate oddity. It was awesome of Ryung. The placement of his Widow Mine was great. The response with the army to ensure the kill of the Phoenix, right? Because Widow Mine doesn't actually one-shot a Phoenix. And then the push timing, the fact that he got a tank nice and close against that Nexus by being just basically bold and brash. Encouraged, no doubt, by the kill of that Phoenix. And I think a second one on the way, right? Is that how that happened? Yeah, you should be emboldened. You should push that aggressively, but Ryung did everything right, and then SKillous kind of did everything wrong, and it does take 2 to tango. So, as much as I want to say that's pure Ryung, you know, can be good at this matchup, it was both of them, I think, working one of their best games and one of their worst games. So, we'll see what happens in Game 3. Really kind of dominating performance in game 1. I know it took longer. Maybe dominating doesn't sound like the right word, but I really think SKillous was all over that first game, start to finish. Second game, dominated by Ryung. A more obvious domination with how good those attacks were. And then it all comes down to game 3. And Ryung doing away with the 3CC, obviously. Back to the factory expand. Worked out really nicely last game. Is still wary of some early adept pressure, so will bother getting a bunker. Or depth or soccer, I guess. It is going to be another Phoenix opener. Well, I shouldn't say that quite off the bat. It could still be Oracle into Twilight Council. We have seen that. I don't know if making a comeback is the right way to phrase it, but I feel like it disappeared for a while, and then it was shown again in a couple of these patch games. But no, that Phoenix confirmation, it is going to be Phoenix. And then most likely Colossus. That is what SKillous did last game. That is the go-to of the Phoenix openers. Every so often, you'll see a Protoss throw out the old Phoenix charge, though. And I think SKillous is capable of doing that, although I think he does lean a little more to the macro side and then the trickery side of things. As Hellion is not really going to get a scout on that follow-up. I mean, scouting that is Phoenix is obviously important, but I would say actually more concerning would be that follow-up, just in case they go for the charge lots. Unfortunately, Ryung probably thinking, hey, he's going to deal with this Hellion. I should just not pay attention to it. Probably could have gotten 2 or 3 probe kills, actually. If he had microed. Oh, well. Funnily enough, still, the Hellion on microed did get a recall. So I don't know. Maybe SKillous would really realize something was going to happen on this side of the map anyway, but yeah, the recall did happen. It is looking very similar, if not completely identical to the last game, except the Hellion, I guess. The Hellion wasn't there last time. Oh, geez. Nice attempt right there. There's a couple things that happened right there that I'll get into in a second. Okay. So one Phoenix will go down. Second Phoenix will not. Cyclone doesn't get that lock on. All right, so the couple things happen with an interaction. One, Ryung realized that the Phoenix were going to be shot by the Widow Mine, and he figured, okay, the Viking might get the last shot that can actually kill the Phoenix. So that's why he let it just, stay in the sky for, I think, a little bit longer. Then thinking you could save it by landing it, but of course Phoenix do have Graviton Beam. That was it was a cute little moment right there. Had he landed it immediately, probably still wouldn't have saved it, right? Because the SCVs wouldn't have gotten close enough to repair it. But fortunately, that Cyclone timing was ideal. Gets at least one Phoenix killed. And that's acceptable, right? That last game was seriously such an outlier. I don't want to say it, but it's been a while since I've seen Phoenix openers go that poorly. But this game looks a lot more normal. One Phoenix killed is still kind of unforgivable for a Phoenix opener this quickly. To lose that is not good. But it's more understandable. One thing has not led to another so far. The second Phoenix has not gone down. And it looks like, actually, Ryung is not going to bother doing the attack. Either because he lost that first Viking and figured not worth it, or because he wanted to just go for an opener that did defend his base, and then maybe instilled a little fear into the Protoss too, like, okay, what if he is going to push? But you do also want Viking and Cyclone to defend your home. It's when you get multiples of those units that you start to say, okay, he's going to try and push me. He's going to come across the map. But yeah. Either way, Ryung is stuck at home. SKillous gets to do his thing with the Phoenix of 6 is a good number. Their Nexus on the way. It was Colossus. Nothing sneaky here. Going to the charge, extended thermal lance, and +1. The Phoenix know that the timer is almost up for being totally unfazed, for just being able to do whatever you want on your side of the map. The army is out. The upgrades are finishing. The medevacs are here. That's when the Terran is going to push. The Observer, nicely placed, is going to see that. And the Phoenix are even going to try and meet that head on. Maybe catch the Cyclone or a medevac that's a little to the side of the army. Or just stay in place and die. Okay, good. Just a little shield damage on a Phoenix. Scan to kind of reveal, maybe the army is there. Maybe some technology is there. Maybe the third base was taken over to the right side. That scan kind of did all of it. I think that's why I put it there. Seeing there's no third base there and there was no army, you can kind of figure out, hey, they took this base. And I think it also saw the gas. Yeah, it did. So you should know that it's not charge. Because I guess technically, yeah, until that gas was scanned, he actually didn't He didn't know that there weren't 40 zealots waiting to go kill his army. Now he knows. So Vikings would be the next natural step, and he does already have 6 medevacs, 5 medevacs. So that's pretty good. Phoenix just trying to track the army. They are not going to engage over what is now a very much full Terran army, but they will once the rest of the army is also willing to engage. One Phoenix gets shot down before the fight even occurs. That is a hefty number of Widow Mines, by the way. No tanks in this game. Just Widow Mines to cover what is a growing number of Zealots. You're not going to start building up that Stalker count for a little bit, especially without that Blink on the way. And the Zealots are going to hopefully defend some of these bigger units long enough that you can react anyway. As SKillous has lost the vision of the army. This Observer is still there, checking out what's in the natural. A little bit of the third base, too. But SKillous does not actually know where the army is. So it could be splitting at this point, which is what he's really concerned by, which is why we have the split Protoss army. Or it could just be coming in all at one place. And that is absolutely what it is. It's absolutely the latter. SKillous, you know, playing with fire a little bit right there. But I guess in the same way that SKillous wasn't sure what Ryung's army looked like or where it was, Ryung also doesn't know where the Protoss army is. For all he knew, that was the entire Protoss army willing to take a fight. So unfortunately, a bit of a missed opportunity. A scan on that third base could have revealed an opportunity. I think, actually, you could have jumped on top of that army. Sniped the Colossus and then gotten away, but c'est la vie. Both players really just getting the time to macro here, wary of each other's army movements, but mostly nothing happening. Finally, SKillous feeling powerful enough to actually move out on the map himself, and Ryung has to be very careful about this. He does have an upgrade lead, Ryung that is. He does have almost 8 Vikings. They would have appeared just as the army collapsed in. Still does not know about this Observer, though, and this is just so much free information. Very, very, very frustrating. Hopefully he is checking. You can kind of do a scroll wheel kind of check. So, if you don't see that, it's very obvious to us at this point, right? But if you're just looking around, you don't really see it. But if you're looking for an Observer, doing this thing kind of can help a little bit. Ryung is not doing it. Ryung does not know. So every time he sieges up, or he prepares for a fight, the Observer's going to see it. Every time he moves an army of harassing units, the Observer's going to see it. He just saw the army move over to the right side, and so SKillous knows that he should defend his 4th base. The Zealots come in as the army moves out. That's how this is going to work, as long as the Observer is getting all this free information. Fortunately, the bunker is up, and the ghosts are pretty good here, so this was, once again, not going to be that effective. The first game, even though Ryung ended up losing it, he was very good at defending the run-bys. There was at least 2, maybe 3 attempts at a Warp Prism drop or a run-by of Zealots that I didn't even cover because they didn't actually do all that much. So that's actually been really good for Ryung. SKillous is not as insistent on these run-bys as a Max Packs, though. So I feel like the more that he is insistent on them, the better they might get. The second Zealot run-by, pretty much immediately after the first one, could have done more damage had it not been clicked on the gas. I mean, still, 10 SCVs go down. 11? I'm like making sure I didn't miss anything else. They spent so long killing a refinery and they still killed 11 SCVs in the last, like, 2 seconds. Alright, okay, fine. That's cool, fine. On behalf of all Terrans out there. But no, seriously. Not that Ryung really was concerned about losing... Well, if he lost his entire mineral line, that's still not good. But we are maxing out. Both players are maxing out. Ryung had already invested into the 4th Command Center, so replacing a handful of SCVs is not that problematic, and is even preparing for a later stage TvP. So not just the 4th base going down, but the 5th base already coming down, as his 2-2 is below halfway done. I mean, that's pretty quick on the 5th base there. Also might be a little slow on the 2-2, to be fair. Maybe a little, but SKillous still only on 1 forge. Seems like Ryung will have the upgrade lead for a little while because that 1 forge is very much on purpose, as we had a quicker transition over to Stargates than I would say what is typical for this matchup. But things are changing with the Disruptors no longer being that powerful transitional army. The one like after your Colossus are kind of useless, right? You go into a very active Stalker Disruptor phase and you get to be the bully in the matchup. With that kind of being in question, it's still an option, because that's kind of what, SKillous said in the first game, but with that still being a little more in question than the previous patch, perhaps faster into the Stargates might be the real plan here, because if the Terran gets maxed out, if they get the 4 CCs with the Planetary and all defensive, they're probably going to go into the Liberator stage next. That's still the way the Terran works out. And either you are in control of the game as the Protoss, beep-bopping around all the bases, killing the Planetaries with DTs, running over the army defenses with Zealots, catching the Liberators on siege with the Stalkers, or you go into you go into Stargates, you go into Carriers, and you have some form of dependable anti-air to deal with the Liberators, and obviously not just the Liberators, can help out against the bio as well. Sometimes, though, the reason we didn't see this as often, the late game air answer to late game Terran, is because a lot of Protoss think that it's not very good. So do keep that in mind. The mothership has been changed. It's a little more mothershipy, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. Abduct doesn't exist in this matchup either, right? And that's that, but nothing changed with the Carrier. The Tempest had its a micro reverted. It's no longer going to be more microable. Still got a change, though, didn't it? Oh, did they get its range still changed, maybe? Forget. But the point is, this late game army hasn't really changed all that much. And if you are of the opinion, like some other pros, some other Protoss players, that late game air is actually not that good in professional late game PvT, well, SKillous could still have some trouble. But as much as this type of army seems to be weaker in the professional side of things, I mean, if we're, plebs playing against this army, we're all terrified, right? But in the professional side of things, this army isn't as scary. It obviously can still do a lot of damage. It can obviously still win this fight. SKillous also has the backup of 3,000 minerals, so if he barely wins out, or barely loses out, I should say, he can remax in like 20 Zealots, and you can buy a lot of time with that. The Zealots aren't necessarily the best unit, but you can buy a lot of time with it. I really like that SKillous bothered to get Storm. I already think even before all the Ghost changes, even when the Ghost had the EMP that was the size of the sun, I already thought that High Templars are still a little underutilized in the late game. Having a Storm in your pocket is just so good, because Terran players, we're all very impatient. We slap down all of our EMPs in one go. We see an opportunity, we're like, bam, 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 and then we're out of EMPs. And we chase after the Protoss army. If there's one Storm in your pocket, that really ruins the momentum. So I've always thought they were a little underutilized, but especially now as we get more experimentation with the energy recharge, backup High Templars, defending your bases with SAG defense, being there in case you have to run away, I think is really actually invaluable. So really good to SKillous get it. Ryung, gonna have to keep that in mind. He saw one Storm already, he knows they're on the field. He's gonna have to keep in mind that if he gets an opportunity, if he gets a perfect engagement, he won't just be able to run and gun. He will have to worry about those backup Storms. We really got ourselves a late game TvP here on Hecate, don't we? We're getting to, like, split situation. Ryung taking this right side base will actually split the map. Excuse me. And then, actually, I'm getting real throwbacks now to what Hecate was. These dilemmas over these bases, these shared bases. If a Planetary gets up here with SAG defense, that'd be very scary. Not sure it's a great idea, though, in this type of game where there are Tempests to shoot down a Planetary, so just missile turrets it is. That's also pretty scary. SKillous is returning the SAG defense in kind, I guess. Just as many cannons and shield batteries as there are going to be missile turrets. That is a lot of Vikings. 21 Vikings, many of them injured, but still dealing the return damage. All the Phoenix are now gone. They weren't that helpful anyway. Going to replace them with something else. Air upgrades are 2-1 for the Terran, and 1-1-1 for the Protoss with that shield as well. We got Titanic Destabilizers on the way, so the Tempest will be better against that static defense, which makes a lot of sense. This is the patch, so just a reminder that sensor towers can be salvaged. I think they got rid of the missile turret salvage, so yeah. Which I think just makes so much sense. Like, the fact they were like, we don't want turtling, but we're going to make these static defenses all salvageable was kind of weird. These are not. Just to really make that clear. Sensor towers are, though. And we could have him put an offensive sensor tower. And even if you can't salvage it because it gets attacked, I still think it's actually pretty useful. And it's really annoying for the Protoss, to be honest. It's almost like having an observer in your base. which, by the way, finally died. But looks like Ryung is very intent on just slow pushing this base. The Tempests are doing their job, and the count of 6. It's actually pretty good. I'm not sure they're one-shotting the Liberators right now, but they're trying. And this is a Terran that is forced to go up a ramp into the static defense of a fully maxed out Protoss army. And I'm not sure there's a real breaking point anytime soon. Yeah, they're going to stalemate for a little while, so do need to do other things, which Ryung does. Just a tiny little hit squad, really nothing. Managing to kill a Nexus, I think. 2 Nexus have been killed in this game. And that's kind of a gamble almost for the Terran. Sometimes all it takes is this amount of units to kill something because the Protoss is maxed out. They can't warp in anymore. And sometimes the Protoss is a little more mindful and wary of that, so they do keep 10 supply-ish, maybe a little more, to warp in. Because, you know, they're not just warping in defensively, like that would have helped there, sure, but they also are usually warping in offensively. You know, DT hit squads. And this is not happening, actually, so Ryung, so far the only one to not put his entire focus on this. SKillous picking up on that, does start to move out some of the, I would say, less useful units as well. I mean, the Archons are useful, but the less useful units over to the side. Nuke does help clear out Sag defense, and okay, I assumed that was seen and avoided. That was kind of close. Does not actually hit the army, but this is worrisome. That, you know, it might. The nuke should only be to clear out the Sag defense. They should not hit the entire army, but there's always that possibility. Mothership does go down. 16 Vikings still here for Ryung. Relatively healthy as well. Looking to one-shot some of these capital ships, which they definitely can do. In the higher numbers of, I think, now 19. EMPs to help clear out some of the storms that SKillous is making sure to, again, have backups of. And I think that is still super, super important. A backup High Templar here could be the reason this Nexus survives. 100%. But Ryung is making some headway. Finally taking control of the high ground is a really scary prospect for SKillous, who, by the way, has been down a base in this game. Yet still taking some, I guess just... Actually, how does he have 5,000 more resources than Ryung? I guess Ryung's just putting so much more into static defense. SKillous put his stat defense up and then has replaced some of it, but it's not as much, maybe. Ryung also getting extra orbitals, obviously, is another Terran thing, so... That's a 5,000 bank difference when Ryung is only down by 1,000 resource lost. That's, Huh. I would have expected a little bit different. It's possible he also didn't transfer his workers for the longest time. That often gets late game players, but... That's still something that SKillous can rely on, apparently. I mean, besides the fact that Protoss can instantly warp in versus the Terran production, so... Basically, if SKillous loses a fight totally one-sidedly, then his warp-ins of 7,000 minerals might not be helpful. Might be totally useless. Oh, love the nuke. Doesn't work out. But if he loses the fight just barely, then a mass Zealot warp-in, again, can do a lot to buy time. And even take down a lot of these units, clear out some of the Sag defense. So they both know it's precarious, basically. They both of them are taking this very seriously for a reason. Even though Ryung seems to be pushing in and winning, he is pushing into the static defense at this point. It's not a win until the fight's over and you've gotten the GG, you know? Like, it's a terrifying idea for both of them to actually take these engagements. Almost all fully maxed out, by the way. Missing a shield for SKillous, missing a plating for Ryung. It's on the way, though. Looks like Ryung, having opened up that high ground, is going to take the opportunity not to push into the massive static defense, but then rather says, why not go onto this other high ground, take out this base that does still have some mining. Vikings trying to make sure that the rest of the army does not follow in suit, but it's going to force the issue. I mean, SKillous is taking so much damage. The Vikings still in the skies, even killing some of these interceptors. There's only one carrier left, so it's actually kind of okay. They should be focusing at this point, though, as the missile turrets do get taken out. They did their job to an extent. They oh my god! I didn't even see the nuke. I did not see that nuke. Okay, good thing only 2 High Templars were killed. Mothership's about to go down, and the Stalker army is not going to match up against the Bio. The Viking number is still high enough. The Tempest with slow DPS. Time Warp is effective. Backup High Templar Storms also almost saving the day, but not quite, as Ryung has a couple of more reinforcing units. He does manage to, I guess, technically win the fight, but not going to be getting any headroom, because there is going to be... how many cannons? Like 9 cannons? 5 shield batteries? Recharge available as well. Still not as cool as overcharge, but whatever. That was a wash, I think. Maybe slightly favoring. Let's see. Yeah, slightly favoring Ryung. Was 1,000 down. Now he's 1,000 up in resources lost, so you know what I mean. And this is actually a really, really good maneuver. Oh, this is kind of devastating, actually. Okay, maybe I spoke too soon. Actually... wait a minute, are Stalkers good? No, they're not. Okay, that's what I thought. The re-maneuvering over to the left side was a very good idea here from Ryung. The landed Vikings, actually still very terrifying. I actually thought the Vikings were going to be way scarier against something but Stalkers, but just enough static defense to help out. The Stalker count actually kind of reaching that critical mass as well, where it can kind of take on a smaller Bio army, you know? Like, pound for pound, the Stalkers should still not match up against EMP plus Tier 3 Bio, but barely working out. Again, a nuke I didn't even hear or see. Jesus, on the backside, kills all the workers there. SKillous able to replace them, but does need to worry at this point. After all these battles, SKillous is now down 3,000 resources, and the trades, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but this game's actually been on a knife's edge. Both of them pushing each other to the limits in the very late game, trying to take these shared bases to ensure a victory down the road, but perhaps losing too much in the process of trying to defend those bases. And this is going to be a really great concave. This is just actually not that terrifying of a Protoss army. Once the EMPs hit the High Templars, this is not that scary. SKillous forced to evacuate, trying to have those Terran army units bathe in the storms, which they basically did. There we go. Needed that last storm coming with the Warp Prism to actually get more kills. It still might not be enough, though. The Medivacs with Caduceus do have the energy to heal up this very battered and bruised army. And unfortunately, because it was really just the storms, like the Tempests were too busy microing away, the Stalkers couldn't really get good shots, they couldn't focus fire. The storms are the only thing really doing damage, and it took so many of them to actually kill stuff. They did eventually do the trick, as in they forced Ryung away. And SKillous going to try and take advantage of this moment, but again, with a very fragile army. This army can't be confident in its push. What's going on here? Little dance, little dance. Dance, dance. Okay. Orbital going to go down, but that's still something that Ryung's not going to care too much about. Planetary should hold for a while. Air units actually left alone. Gonna use the Mothership Cloak, but a scan is available. Still plenty of extra orbitals elsewhere. I don't know why I have so many oracles, but we do. I guess, oh, he's been maybe catching the ghost with the oracles, which is not efficient, unfortunately. Or maybe he was planning on more stasis traps, but never got the opportunity. Either way, the army of SKillous dismantling before our very eyes, staying at the 150 supply, struggling to get over that as Ryung does remax with a very good army. I mean, at this point, I'm not going to say just Bio would do the trick, because I don't think that's true, but it's getting to that point where you wonder, can Bio on the ground actually win this game? But Vikings still being produced. SKillous not going to let a surprising number of air units suddenly start taking out his armies. There is an observer in the army. He has so many oracles. I mean, I definitely accidentally built oracles instead of Tempest. That might have also been what's happened here. How many oracles has he lost? Oh, 59 Templar, Jesus. 4 oracles, so he's made 6 in total in this game. He might have been planning on more stasis traps. I kind of hope he does. Okay, yeah. Stasis traps going to start going down. All right. Okay. All right. This could be very important. Stasis traps could be extremely important. We're getting ourselves into a little base trade situation here. Planetary does go down. 23 SCVs killed as well. Ryung not going to take that line down. He's going to go to the right side and kill this base, which was almost mined out anyway. SKillous is not mining from a whole lot of minerals. It does have this nexus with a couple of gold minerals ready to go in just a few seconds. And unfortunately, Ryung not quite in the same position, to be losing those extra orbitals and potentially having his production camped. He's realizing it now. He re-rallies his army to the high ground. I think SKillous might have pulled this one out, actually. Just pulled a rabbit out of his hat, man. Oh, the transformation servos could have been very useful in some of these fights. I'm a big fan of that upgrade, honestly. Big fan. That is like 3 or 4 orbitals killed, by the way, guys. I don't know how many more Ryung has, but that could be a problem as he has dipped below 40 SCV. Still only mining off of 1 base. I guess that's not quite a problem, but just throwing it out there. Ryung, after all the hubbub, only able to kill 1 of his opponent's bases, whereas SKillous killed, 2 plus a bunch of extra orbitals. And then Ryung, he did get his own orbital up in the same position and now mirroring each other, both desperately mining from those shared bases. And 1 extra orbital, maybe going to try and steal some more minerals over here. That would be the best thing to do in this type of game, right? 28 minutes. Close to base race. Oh, no. The bathing of the storms. Oh, my God. I'm telling you. Every Terran does it. I'm telling you. Every Terran sees, like, their eyes go so wide, it's like a cartoon character when they see all the High Templars are EMP'd, and they're like, I'm gonna win! And if there's 1 backup High Templar, they're like, oh, who could have seen that coming? Wow. Fortunately, Ryung, that could not have been a misclick, right? That had to have been him being like, no, I can do this. Like, here's the moment. No, never mind, it's not the moment. Just kidding, run away. Again, fortunately, the medevacs have plenty of energy, but now dwindling in numbers. 1 more goes down, leaving Ryung only at 3 medevacs. He is building more, and he is still maxed out. A 50 supply advantage for Ryung, by the way. I mean, that's really hard to tell in this type of game. I mean, Ryung probably figures he has a bigger army, and he knows that his army is better if the High Templars do not get their storms off. He knows that the army is better. But actually getting the fight that Ryung wants is proven to be difficult. SKillous' army is highly mobile. Tempest, with all of their speed and acceleration buffs over the years, I know the most recent one didn't go through, but still, are actually pretty mobile. They're... I mean, they're siege breakers, but it's just... Not to go into the whole game design philosophy thing. Anyways, it's a mobile army. But at the end of the day, with it coming down to the last few mineral patches on the map, the mobility of the army might not be good enough. There we go. We got another attempt of Ryung to actually just win the game by brute force, hoping to weather these storms. There's still so many. It might be the last one right there. Marauders barely living through it. Shield battery overcharge not available in this patch, but hold on a second. Hold on. No Vikings, no Marines. Tempest still in the skies, and Ryung loses his 50 army supply advantage. Gets put down to a mere 30 for a second. Now back up to 60, though, as he does recollect his army. So many Terran units barely not dead. 1 more storm would have done many of them in. Ryung still with enough minerals and gas, although not for very much longer, to afford 6 more Vikings. Might just be the ticket here. And it would only be Stalkers left over. Mass Zealots, not terribly comforting to see. Because if you were figuring, like, hey, this guy is not maxed out, this guy is kind of desperate, I think I have a chance here, and then you see 20 Zealots, you start to doubt yourself. You're like, oh no, is that bank bigger than I thought? And it was slightly bigger than maybe Ryung's expecting, who can't really say, but it is gone at this point. Completely gone. No more emergency Zealot warp-ins. Unfortunately, Ryung chooses a poor time to start to send his plane command center back. It had been scouted by the building nexus of SKillous, so if that hadn't happened, it might have actually been able to escape. That leaves Ryung on 1, 2, 3, 4 orbitals and a planetary. That's not too bad, actually. But he needs to take a decisive fight soon. Zealots could once again be a problem. No Widow Mines in play, but there are EMPs, and now a number of Marines. That's the DPS is really going to help out here. Rest of the Terran army coming through. Marines are going to be the ticket, actually. They're going to be perfect against the number of Zealots that were there. The Vikings conquering the Tempest in the skies, and the Marauders living through it all. Although, once again, getting bathed in storms here. Into the red we go. Those backup High Templars are really the only reason that SKillous is in the game. Unfortunately, it might not be enough. Resources lost, actually dead even. How? How? Oh my god. I've seen so much carnage on both sides. Ay, ay, ay. SKillous is not ready to tap out. He still has his middle base mining healthily. He now has another base that's half mining. It's better than nothing. It's better than what Ryung has. Look at the numbers here. That is a lot more resources coming in for SKillous, but he invested so many of those resources in Zealots that actually ended up not being good at all. Zealots can be freaking amazing if they find a small portion of the bio away from other bio, right? If they find mostly Marauders, then the Marauders can't kill them fast enough. And if they get a full surround, obviously, then they can be the force fields that trap the Terran army, and the Storms can get really good shots. All ideal situations, they didn't really pan out right there. The Marines came in on the backside of the Marauders, coincidentally, but pretty much perfectly. And that was it for the Zealots. So, Zealots are not going to save SKillous in this game. The Terran army have to be way smaller for that to be the case. And, Tempest might be the way to go. But I just don't know. I actually don't know what is SKillous's real solution here, as his base does get destroyed. He'd actually already mined it out for the most part anyways. I don't know how helpful it was going to be for a while longer, but Ryung still not able to happily mine off this base. Once again denied for a little bit. Is still mining more. He's also going to be able to drop mules on this space and mine it out in turn. The resource loss to be different now. What the fuck? It's only 1,000 difference. SKillous has mined so many minerals in this game to still be in it. Jesus. I don't know how many nukes we have in tow. Alright, that is the last one. He did build 3 Ghost Scoutings at one point and kind of had a stockpile, but this is the last one. Is it going to hit? It really should not hit. Okay, the Stalkers do move away, but the Tempest kind of didn't. Oracle goes down. Tempest gets injured. Stag defense now pretty much useless. Only one more shield battery with any energy. And I think Ryung has done it, guys. I think Ryung has finally done it. He knows those High Templars are still waiting in the wings. And he's not going to over-dedicate this time around, knowing that he also cannot reinforce. You know, the last, like, 3 or 4 engagements, if he did not have a mineral income, if he had, you know, not been able to find these mining bases, he would have been dead. Because he really, really tried to push the issue, even though the storms are coming down left, right, and center. And now that he's realized, like, okay, no, I really can't remake these. And I got mostly Marines now. Well, not mostly Marines, but he's got more Marines, I think, than some of the previous engagements. He's now dependent on Marines. That's the best way to put it. There we go. He can build Marines, right? Marauders are actually kind of costly. And Marines are absolutely vulnerable to High Templars. So, gotta be careful with this army. Even though it does look like Ryung's gonna win. How many High Templars do we have? 2 High Templars could be all the difference in the world. Ryung also getting a Viking count nice up high, and will actually be able to take on the Tempests, hopefully away from the High Templars. And then the Bio Army. I mean, they can mostly weather the storm, I think. Quite literally. They would have to be in the most clumped up position possible for... it might be 4 storms by the time the engagement happens. This is all considering the EMPs don't hit at all, which seems like a big... That seems like a really big hope for SKillous. There are 6 ghosts, more to come. He can only protect the High Templars for so long before having to pull them to the front. Here we go, case in point. Actually, a couple of ghosts that were cloaked up go in as well. The storms are still hitting, though. The storms are still hitting. And we actually had more storms. Not quite ready to go. Recharge not available. But with now 5 High Templars threatening a storm on top of this army, Ryung says, nah, I'm not going to push the issue. Nah, I'm good. He's still not able to clear out all the storms. There's always one at least in SKillous' back pocket. And SKillous is, man, he's trying to go Super Saiyan at this point. Yeah. I want to hope, I want to believe. But at this point in time, it's going to take a massive screw-up by Ryung for SKillous to win. There's not really much that SKillous can do. He can't really take control of his own destiny here. Because even though this mineral line looks nice and tempting to send a couple of Zealots in, SKillous can hardly afford it. He could afford 3 Zealots, and it would probably be worth it, but... Very, very, very difficult game for Ryung. I mean, Ryung, once he's maxed out, I think he will just power through the storms. You know, fuck it. This has gone on for too long. There's no way that you're actually going to survive. Observer is there. You can try and snipe the Observer, I guess. That is only one Observer. That, well, we know that. And not only does Ryung not know that there's not more Observers, but then there are cannons, so. Cloaky Ghosts not being the end game answer that Ryung's hoping for so far. Maybe they will be eventually. SKillous knows that his only hope is the High Templar, so he's making sure they're constantly spread out. This can leave them a little more open to snipes instead of EMPs, but that's why the army is still staying here. Right? EMPs are still the more surefire way to get this storm out of the equation. It leaves the High Templars open to make Archons, but Archons are really not a big deal at this point. Storms are far scarier than Archons, and it looks like almost all the storms are gone. No, I'm always wrong about that one. There's still 5 High Templars waiting in the wings, ready to shine once the ghosts have all thought, okay, it's all done, we can go now, right? But it looks like Ryung just has too many ghosts. At this point, SKillous also clumping up his High Templar, something fierce actually. They could be in trouble. It does a last-second split, but I think it's only one more storm to go, and that'll be it. If that, no, there's no additional storm. This is gonna be it. SKillous is gonna be forced to tap out after 39 minutes.